A lot of them are even older than that. So it's sad because the number of borrowers with those loans are just diminishing over time. And so they're kind of getting forgotten and left out of all of these initiatives. For example, they were left out of public service loan forgiveness until the waiver took place. And they're left out of programs, and they will likely be left out of all future programs as well. So one of our recommendations is for most borrowers with FFEL loans still, it's probably still a good idea to consolidate. Even if you don't qualify for this one-time loan forgiveness, you're going to continue to be left out of future government initiatives simply because the loan isn't held by the government. So who knows what's coming down the pipeline? I couldn't tell you. I can't, foresee the future, but I can tell you that the rules for your loans, of FFEL loans, will always be limited compared to what's offered for direct loans.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you sort of brought up the fact that there are a lot of borrowers that kind of are being left behind. Why is the Biden administration doing this now? Why now all of a sudden are they wanting to create a one-time debt relief program and also go back and change older programs for the better?
Well, I think the one-time debt relief program really came out of the politics that he campaigned on in terms of we're trying to help borrowers with loan forgiveness. And, I can't, pretend to even, fathom the amount of deal making and politics that went into figuring out 10,000, 20,000, what we're going to give, because I think we've all seen that, on one side of the equation, it's forgive all student loan debt. On the other side of the equation, it's no, hold borrowers accountable to repay their loans. And, this policy kind of emerged somewhere in the middle. And given the timing of the policy and the way it was rushed and implemented, and now the challenges we're seeing, it's very clear that it wasn't totally well thought out. And, the rumors of at least the FFEL loan problem was that they were negotiating with all of the FFEL lenders to say like, hey, can we come to some sort of a deal or agreement? Like, don't sue us. And clearly that didn't materialize. And, they ended up filing different lawsuits, and here we are today. So I can't tell you how we came to the $10,000 or $20,000. I can't tell you why it came at this exact moment, but a lot of politics were likely involved in that, because it really doesn't solve the problem. It's very helpful to borrowers. Like, let's not dismiss the potential to help borrowers that need this relief. Like, they need it. People really are struggling with their loans, but on the same token, you have $90 billion that we just lent out last year to new college students that are going to college, and it's not solving the greater higher education cost crisis problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, speaking of borrowers who are really struggling with their student loan payments, those borrowers who have Pell Grants can receive more student loan debt forgiveness, so up to $20,000. Can you talk a little bit about the Pell Grant program and who that really targets?
Yeah, so Pell Grant targets low-income students. So these were grants that were given when you went to college. And it's hard because a lot of people might not even realize or remember they got a Pell Grant. So when you fill out the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, all that information goes to your school's financial aid office. And then they give you your financial aid grants and report. And they say, like, here's what you get to go to college. And one of those line listings might have been a federal Pell Grant. And depending on your income level, you could have received free money to college. So it doesn't have anything to do with what you have to pay back. You only have to pay back a Pell Grant if you dropped out and didn't finish, for any money that you got the grant for. But otherwise, the federal Pell Grant's a great way to help low-income borrowers pay for college. And then as a result, those borrowers are deemed as, let's potentially give them more in student loan forgiveness. And, I don't know if it's the best qualifier in terms of who should get more and who should get less, but it's an easy way to figure out these were lower income students at the time they took out their student loans.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you know what the cutoff date is for this debt relief plan? Like, do you have to have gotten your student loans before a certain day to be able to qualify for this plan?
Sorry, I didn't. Do you have to get to apply for Biden's student loan? It's next year, but the application's currently closed. So I couldn't tell you exactly when they want to do it. But for Biden's plan, you have to have direct student loans. That's the key. And so if you had loans from before 2009, you run the risk that they aren't the right loan type unless you didn't qualify, if that's what you meant.
Sorry, I meant like if did your loans have to be dispersed by a certain date in order to be eligible to apply for this
Yeah,
program?
so you had to have loans from last fiscal year. So your loans had to come out. You had to have them in your bank account before June 30th of this year, June 30th, 2022, because that's how the government kind of does their financial aid. So starting July 1st, it's the new year, which is kind of makes sense, right? Students that are starting in the fall of August this year. But I will say, as a result of that cutoff date, that there are millions of college students across this country that are in their second, third, or fourth year of school that probably will get $10,000. So if you're a college student or know a college student, you should definitely apply because you can get those loans forgiven.
Absolutely. Just a reminder to everyone here, please put questions in the Q&A box if you have questions that you want us to answer. It looks like we have one from Lark. He says, if one's only incurred a small amount of student loan debt to date, but plans to incur more, what do you advise in terms of when to apply for debt forgiveness?
Well, it's hard. So if you're talking about Biden's one-time student loan forgiveness program, you should apply now because you can't actually apply anyways. The application is currently closed. But if it does reopen and you did not apply, you should apply because it is one time. It's a done deal. And, if you miss it, you miss it. And that's it. I mean, not to say they won't do this again in the future. Now, if you're talking about something like public service loan forgiveness, which is really common, for example, a few years, and they have that existing student loan debt, and then they go back for like a master's degree, right? And so you have 2 rounds of loans. Well, for public service loan forgiveness specifically, every loan and every payment is counted on its own individual time. So you should be applying for your employment certification forms for public service loan forgiveness basically every year so that your older loans will have their counts on the way to 120. And your newer loans, if you do take out newer loans, they'll just have different counts. But at least you're getting those older loans forgiven sooner. So, there wasn't a lot of information there on the different loan forgiveness programs, but hopefully that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Rebecca asks, what if I have a loan in default? Do I still qualify?
So, here's the hard one is, yes, you should still qualify, but the cool thing is that you can get your loan out of default when payments resume. So honestly, I think the best program that is not talked about very much is the Fresh Start program. And this was kind of a footnote in President Biden's announcement. But basically, every loan that was delinquent or in default before the pandemic, so in March of 2020, can resume out of default back to on-time current status when payments resume if you follow the steps outlined in the Fresh Start program. And you can find this at studentaid.gov/Fresh Start. And I'm sure Nick can drop the link for you guys and put it in the show notes after. But the Fresh Start program is phenomenal because all you have to do is get on an income-driven repayment plan as soon as repayments resume. And guess what? You can get your delinquencies removed, you get your default removed, your loan comes back into current status. And then if this one-time forgiveness goes through, yes, you can get that one-time forgiveness as well. So that Fresh Start program is phenomenal for borrowers that were in delinquency and default. It's a great way to fix your credit. It's a great way to get out of any kind of wage garnishments, especially, if they're going to, tax return offsets, all that stuff. Get out of that stuff and get your loans back on track. And Nick just dropped the link there and you can follow the steps.
Absolutely. And just to clarify, so even if your loans were in default before the pandemic, can you still take advantage of this program?
You've got to get them out of default first. But that's the other thing is this program, if it does go through, can go all the way until December 31st of 2023. So get out of default when payments resume, apply.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have a lot of questions coming in, but I'm going to move on to talk about the legal issues surrounding forgiveness. So there was some big news last week. We found out that a federal judge in Texas struck down the plan and ruled it illegal. Within 24 hours, the Biden administration then closed its student loan forgiveness application, saying that, has multiple court orders pending and basically wants to get through these several legal challenges before they if and when they reopen the application. Robert, can you talk a little bit about the these lawsuits that have been coming up ever since the plan was announced in August, and why they're important and how they're affecting the forgiveness plan?
Yeah, I think it's important for borrowers to realize that, Biden's position on, whether he could do this unilaterally, whether through the HEROES Act or even the Higher Education Act, is questionable. There's experts on both sides that have their opinions on whether it's legal, whether it's not legal. And so, these lawsuits were inevitable in some regard. The real question was who had standing, and actually, would standing even matter? So a lot of people have probably heard of like standing, and it basically means who has the right to sue somebody. And so to sue somebody, you have to say you were harmed by this action, and there's a lot of rules around who can do it. And so people were curious, like, could a loan servicer do it? Which is in one of the cases we found. Could an individual do it? Another case said the individual was harmed. A lot of these questions were not necessarily clear, but, on the flip side, courts do have to consider standing, but our current definition of standing is actually just as old as other landmark cases that have been overturned. So it was created in the 80s based on some other court rulings, right? And so judges could just say like, well, I think the standing issue might be there, might not be there, but the merits of this case are also so important that we gotta like override some of the other issues there. So the inevitability of these lawsuits was always going to be there, but the real thing is that I think people should realize who can forgive student loans, because I see this a lot that Biden can just unilaterally forgive it. Well, I like to always think of that song of like, when we learned in second or third grade of like how to make a bill in Congress, like what the power of every branch is. Well, Congress could always pass a law and forgive student loans. So, and that wouldn't be questioned. Like they literally could do that. And so as we're deciding on who, what, when, where, how, why, realize that it was always iffy. They tried something. It's stuck in the courts right now. For borrowers' sake, I hope it goes through. And I hope the one thing that borrowers take out of this is as soon as you get a chance to take action, take action. So like I said, if an application opens up, apply, because I know the administration is trying really, really hard to forgive as much student loan debt as fast as they possibly can. But that requires borrowers to take action. Like you need to just jump in there, get that application in, make sure that you get all your documents done on time so that you have the opportunity should the opportunity arise.
Right. And like you just said, the Biden administration is trying to cancel federal student loan debt as quickly as possible. Why is there such an urgency? So for context, everyone here, before the plan was put on hold and they stopped accepting applications, the Biden administration was recommending borrowers to apply by November 15th. So that way their forgiveness could be processed by the time repayment begins in January. Doesn't really seem like that's going to be the case anymore. So I'm wondering, Robert, what could happen next? It seems like the fate of student loan forgiveness is uncertain right now.
I mean, you got it right. I think the Biden administration was trying to get these loans forgiven before these lawsuits got stopped, or before the lawsuits stopped it from happening. And the goal was, right, as soon as you're issuing relief to people, it's really hard to stop it, right? Like, and so that's where it's like they were trying to, they didn't make that happen. And I think their other concern was, the politics of it, right? So all these questions of standing were very, there's a lot of gray area, but there's one that's very crystal clear, and that's Congress. Congress 100% likely has standing in this. And so, but it takes a vote of Congress to file a lawsuit against the president. And they've done this over time in history. So how do you get that? Who's going to file that lawsuit? Well, probably the House of Representatives will file that lawsuit to stop it. And that one is a lot harder for the judges to say they don't have standing, because Congress is going to say, hey, this is a power delegated to Congress. You don't get to decide how much to spend money and things like that. And so I think the standing question gets eliminated, and then it becomes a very policy-driven question. But either way, we're stuck in limbo as borrowers for months, years, I don't know, however long it would take for that to unfold. And so again, the Biden administration was trying to get forgiveness going and done as fast as possible to try to avoid this exact predicament that we're finding ourselves in terms of being student loan borrowers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the big takeaway for bars, from my understanding, is that the legal challenges are really, it gets really complicated really fast. But what bars need to know right now is that the Biden administration basically isn't allowed to cancel any federal student loan debt, and it's unclear if they ever will be able to, until these court cases move forward or resolved, or there's some sort of resolution that comes out of this. Marilyn actually asked, what if the Biden forgiveness plan doesn't go through by the time we have to start paying back? What should we do as borrowers?
I mean, you have to prepare for repayment to resume. I think it's, as of right now, slated to start on January 1st. However, like the tea leaves are already looking like that could be extended again because everything is paused. However, I always like everyone to plan for it. Like you can't rely on the government here to help you out. Like, that you got this payment due, you have a couple months, like start budgeting, figure out what your monthly payment would be, make sure that you're ready to go come January. And that typically means, hey, let's go find out where my loans are, what my loan servicer login is. Like, is my address updated? Do they have all my contact information? Like making sure you have all that stuff so you don't miss that first bill if it comes in the mail or comes by, if you have an e-bill set up. Because you want to make sure that all that's set up so you don't miss anything and like fall into delinquency like right off the bat. So, the goal is that, maybe forgiveness comes. I think there's potential that they extend the pause. Who knows? We're speculating here, but the writing is kind of on the wall starting to be. But you should definitely plan to resume payments in the new year if if nothing else comes of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to piggyback off that, one thing that comes up a lot in conversations with experts is you want to hope for the best, but prepare for the worst, like you said. So you want to just assume that those payments are going to resume in January. And like you said, start taking the right steps to prepare to make those payments again. And we'll definitely go over that for everyone here, how to prepare for repayment to resume. So want to touch briefly on the student loan forgiveness application and give everyone an update here who, in case anyone missed this earlier this week, the application did close last Friday. The Department of Education basically said they will hold applications that have already been submitted. There is about 26 million applications submitted, 16 million approved, and basically going to hold these applications until the legal challenges are resolved. And that's all we know right now. As far as I know, Robert, correct me if I'm wrong, the White House or the Department of Education isn't processing or reviewing applications in the meantime. It seems like everything is like really more at a standstill now than it used to. I know when one of the lawsuits initially came up, they reiterated that they would continue processing applications and accepting them, but it sounds like that's not going to be the case, at least for the time being. And for someone, I think I saw a question in here from someone. I don't know if I can find it. I might have lost it. Someone asked, what if I missed applying today for student loan forgiveness? Because the recommended deadline originally was today. And just to clarify, the application is closed. You can no longer apply right now. So that's why we recommend subscribing to student loan relief updates with the Department of Education. They'll send an email, a mass email out when it if and when it reopens. Want to caveat that if it reopens, because we don't know. Robert, any thoughts on, were you surprised when they closed the student loan forgiveness application? Was that surprising to you?
It was surprising to me. And I think it shows the, the concern the Department of Education has to move forward, because honestly, there's no harm and no foul to just collect everyone's info and be ready to go. But to even take the step of saying like, hey, like, we're not even going to collect any info anymore. That really shows that I don't think they even see a path forward at this point in time with it, which is very concerning, because, just taking names and being ready isn't forgiveness, and it isn't anything that needed to really be stopped. Honestly, I think the only other reason why they might have stopped it is because of resource constraints, right? Like, we have to remember, and I think a lot of people forget this, is both the Department of Education and the loan servicers are organizations with people, And there's a set number of people there, and they are struggling to hire for these organizations too. And so every time you take a person off of a project, to whether it's put them on the one-time loan forgiveness, it means it's one less person that can be maybe used to take care of the PSLF waiver or get ready for payments to resume in the new year, things like that. And so, it could also have been a manpower issue. The fact that, hey, maybe this loan forgiveness is going to take a while. Like maybe it's not a no, but maybe like it's going to get tied up in the courts for the next 3 months. So during that time period, let's put the personnel on other things that we can do, like public service loan forgiveness waivers, which for those not familiar with the public service loan forgiveness waiver, you had to get all your paperwork in by October 31st. And they're doing a manual review of people's public service loan forgiveness applications. And as a result of that manual review, it's taking upwards of 4 months for people to get the loan forgiveness. So, hopefully they're being smart and putting people into other things and getting people other ways to get loan forgiveness. But, it really does come down to a manpower and resource thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And when they first initially launched the application, there was a lot of emphasis about how it's going to be easy and simple and fast. So for everyone here, if you didn't apply already, and if the application reopens, these are the 5 things that you need to fill out the application. They just ask for a full name, social security number, date of birth, phone number, and email address. Robert, what did you think about the application? Did you think it lived up to its promise?
Yeah, I mean, that was the easiest application that I've ever seen for any type of government program. So honestly, like you said, it's those 5 things. It should take you like 2 minutes to fill out. And then I think you check 2 or 3 boxes. It says like, I certify, I promise under penalty of perjury that I'm not lying. And then like, I'm e-signing my name. It's the easiest application possible. So yeah, it should take no more than 2 to 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, for everyone here, just to reiterate, the application is closed, but you can definitely check out time.com/NextAdvisor for any updates on that. We'll be sure to update you if the application opens back up. So we have a lot of people asking in the Q&A about old loans. I know you touched on that a little bit earlier. So several questions about loans from 2000, 1990s, 1980s. Any insight on if those loans are eligible for forgiveness? I know you mentioned like a 2009 cutoff date.
Yeah, so direct loan, you have to have a direct loan. You have to have a direct loan for Biden's one-time loan repayment. You have to have a direct loan for public service loan forgiveness going into the future. Not with the waiver, but going into the future. So you have to have a direct loan. A lot of people just don't know if they have a direct loan. I think that's what it goes to. So the rule of thumb I gave is a good place to start, but I see a lot of the questions as well. Well, hey, I consolidated, or, things also happen to people's loans over time. So, the best way to find out what kind of loan you have is to go to studentaid.gov and you log in. And then in the top right-hand corner there, it says like My Aid or My Aid dashboard. And what it will do is it'll pull up a whole dashboard of all of your federal student loans. And it'll also pull up a Pell Grant. So if you didn't know if you had a Pell Grant or not, that'll show up there as well. And on that, you'll see a line listing of all of your loan types. If it says FFEL, it's an FFEL loan. If it says direct, it's a direct loan. So that's the best way that you can tell. And honestly, you have to kind of go over and look at your balance too. So it'll tell you your history. So you might have like FFEL 0, and then like a direct consolidation loan and a balance there. And that means that your FFEL ones they're gone now, they're old, and you now have a direct consolidation loan. So that's the way that you can tell, is to go to studentaid.gov and log in, and you can see your My Aid dashboard. And that is the source of truth for really knowing what loan types you have.
Yeah. Speaking of different loan types, there's a question from Mark. He asked, if we applied for public service loan forgiveness, which required us to consolidate our loans to a direct loan, then should we also qualify for this current $10,000 to $20,000 debt forgiveness program?
Yes, if your loan type qualifies as a direct loan, it will qualify. I mean, the only other restriction would be potentially your income level, right? So as long as your income matches or is lower than the guidelines, the direct loan will qualify for Biden's one-time loan forgiveness. It's also the same as public service loan forgiveness.
Yeah, absolutely. So Donna asked, I file income taxes separately from my husband. I make more than 125,000 a year, but together we are under 250,000. Do I qualify?
So if you married filing separately, I am sorry, but you are treated as a single filer for Biden's one-time relief. So yes, it's a great way to lower your monthly student loan payments, but it does exclude you on this front from that.
Okay. Susan asked, can you talk about the IBR waiver?
The IBR waiver is a mishmash of programs. So there's no set thing called the IDR waiver. It's actually a bunch of different programs kind of mixed together. So the biggest one is that you will get credit for any forbearance steering or, well, first off, we can back it up. So what is this? So if you're on an income-driven repayment plan, you get loan forgiveness after 20 or 25 years, depending on when your loan originated. Well, it came to light that the Department of Education did not do a good job or a job of tracking how many payments people have made that qualify to get you to that loan forgiveness point at 20 or 25 years. As a result, they said, hey, we're going to try to fix this. We're going to go through and we're going to audit everybody's plans that they've made under these income-driven repayment plans and get you an IDR count. And they're going to get that count. They're going to post it on your dashboard, just like they do right now with the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. So for those familiar, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program has to get to 120 payments, 10 years. And they put a count in your dashboard of how many of your payments qualify. So the goal is to do that. And with this, they also learned that, hey, there might have been a problem with what's called forbearance steering, which is instead of staying on your income-driven repayment plan, we're going to put people in forbearance where they don't make payments. And they, as a result, you're not paying your loans, but you're not, accumulating any payments to get to this forgiveness. So there's a mishmash of problems there in the IDR program, and the IDR waiver is designed to fix that. And the goal was to get everyone's payment counts for both their payments they've made and periods of forbearance or deferment into their loans this summer. Well, that didn't really happen because they got caught up with the one-time loan forgiveness and the PSLF waiver and different things. Now, they are still processing the IDR waiver and getting people's payment counts accurate, but they're kind of doing it in an order now. They're doing it in, I'm going to help people with the PSLF waiver first, just so I can clear off those applications. Then they were going to do people at the one-time loan forgiveness, clear out all those student loan borrowers, and then they were going to get to everyone that's left, basically. And so the Department of Education posted on their website that all the payment count adjustments won't actually be done until summer of 2023 at this point in time, because their plan was to eliminate a bunch of the loans that they actually had to check over the next, 6 to 9 months. And that way, the amount of loans that they have to manually review would be substantially lower. So it's coming. It will hopefully help people, but it's kind of the lowest priority according to what the Department of Education has said versus all of these other programs.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of IDR, can you talk a little bit, Robert, about the new IDR or income driven repayment plan that Biden wants to create with this broad student loan forgiveness plan as well? Because that kind of fell under the radar, it seemed like, when this was first announced, because the forgiveness part of it was what caught people's eyes.
It did. And so as part of all of these student loan forgiveness initiatives, President Biden announced a new income-driven repayment plan. It's tentatively being called the Expanded Income Contingent Repayment. And I want borrowers to realize that this is actually, I think, the third time the administration has proposed this program. And so it's not really a new program, but I think the goal was by the president kind of lighting a fire under everybody for this, like it will get the attention it deserves to actually be implemented for once, instead of just continually being proposed and never actually happening. So it is only a proposal right now, but if it goes through, it would cap people's monthly payments at 5% of their, discretionary income, which is a good savings of right now, it's either 10 to 15% on the current income driven repayment plans. And it has a bunch of various other details of, different ones, but that's the big one. It should save people in their monthly payment up to 50%, basically. If they're on a 10%, like pay as you earn or IBR, it could lower it to 5%. That, if it goes into effect, it will happen next fall, but that would be like the soonest it happens. And that also is assuming that when they actually put the regulations into effect, it doesn't change very much from past proposals of the same plan.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of questions about public service loan forgiveness. And just to clarify, you can qualify for public service loan forgiveness and still qualify for this one-time loan forgiveness, right, Robert?
Absolutely. There is no, as long as your income qualifies. I think that's the kicker with the one-time loan forgiveness. The one-time loan forgiveness, the real only stipulation on that one is income. So as long as you have the right loan type and you make under the income limits and it goes through, you qualify. Public service loan forgiveness is 120 payments, 10 years, right? Of public service employment on a qualifying repayment plan. And that'll get you loan forgiveness of your balance. But happy to dive into those questions if you want to.
Yeah, it looks like I saw one from James. He just said, my question is about PSLF long term. That is still in effect, correct? I submitted past employers and consolidated my loans, but I think you kind of just answered.
PSLF isn't going anywhere. I think a lot of people have always been fearful just because it's 10 years. It's a long time. Like, what if I'm 5 years in and then the government decides to change something on a whim? They could, but I like to remind all borrowers that most loan programs, I think all loan programs, but I'll say most loan programs are based on when your loan was originated, the date it was borrowed. So let's just say they did, Congress wants to eliminate public service loan forgiveness. They could, but it wouldn't necessarily impact you. What they would say is all loans after, July 1st, 2024 no longer are eligible. And that's how they would propose it, because they would write these into the master promissory notes and agreements for these loans. And so it's almost like the reverse dilemma that we see with the FFEL borrowers. Because the FFEL borrowers have those certain loans, they're stuck on those programs. Well, you have a direct loan, you're stuck with PSLF, but then they could change it in the future on future loans.
Carrie asked, with loan forgiveness, what if I worked 4 years and 9 months with a nonprofit and then went on sick leave that was impacted by COVID? Also, does volunteer work count towards loan forgiveness? I believe there was another question in the audience about volunteer work. Does that count?
Yeah. So, well, first off, I'd like to remind everyone that it doesn't have to be continuous employment, and every loan is tracked individually by month, right? So you have to get to 120 payments somehow. And so if you're at 4 years and 9 months, 12, 24, 36, 48, what is that? If you're at 54 eligible payments, and your payment counter will just kind of stick around at that 54 mark. And then if you start qualifying employment again in the future, well, you could start resuming other ones. It doesn't have to be continuous. You can bounce around, you could take leaves of absences, things like that. Volunteering does not count, but the employment at a nonprofit like a 501c3 does count. So, the only exception to that is the Peace Corps. But you're basically employed there too. So they have a separate kind of set of rules there, but you can't just volunteer for full-time 30 plus hours a week. You actually have to be employed, get a W-2 that shows your employment at those organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I do want to touch on how to prepare for repayment, because this is coming up really soon. We know that repayment, as far as we know, repayment will begin after December 31st for student loans. It's been on pause for about 3 years now. So federal loan borrowers have not had to make any payments on their student loans since March 2020. And as we said earlier, it could get extended again because of these court cases that are dragging on, but borrowers really shouldn't count on it until the Biden administration comes and says, yes, it is extended. Because Robert, I think we talked about this earlier, how the Biden administration kind of tends to leave it a little last minute when they extend these payment pauses, don't they?
Absolutely. I think that last one was like 20 something days out from payments resuming. And that's really, that's just hard on borrowers. Like, my goodness, it's very stressful. So my recommendation is, like, I think you have it right there. It's just, know what you have, get organized, log into your loan servicer's website. I'm a big believer that you should be logging into your loan servicer's website, making sure that you have that access, you have that secure mailbox. So like, if you did have to upload something like a public service employment certification form, you do it digitally, you have the record of it. If you don't know where your loans are, now's the time to find them. So go to studentaid.gov. You can see where your loans are listed there. You could also pull your credit report. Go to annualcreditreport.com, get your credit report for free. You can see all your loans there. That's very helpful if you think you have private loans, right? They might not have been paused, but maybe you forgot about them. You got to find your loans. You got to get organized so that you can be ready to make those loan payments. Check your balance, your budget in January. And, if it does get extended, cool. You have a little bit of extra money you could save, you could put towards retirement, something like that. But really, please just plan on being ready to make payments so that you don't fall into default or delinquency right away.
Yeah, a question that I think comes up for a lot of borrowers is whether they should be making payments on their student loans right now while the interest rate's at zero, or if they should be doing other things with what would usually be their student loan payment.
Please don't. Just no. Never. Okay. So I hope everyone has learned their lesson that made payments when they didn't have to make payments, when it came to getting a refund on your payments and all this stuff, because you're eligible to, and we could touch on that too. But if you're just never give the government any money that they are not legally entitled to, it does not benefit you. It does not help you, nothing. If you want to make a lump sum or want to make payments to your student loans, put that money in a savings account. Just leave it there. Let it earn a little bit of interest. Even if it earns you $5, just leave it there. Don't give it to the government, because there's no reason to. Your interest is set to zero. Your monthly payment is set to zero. It does not benefit you in any way to give the government a payment. It's just costing you money every single month that you didn't have to spend. You could even be saving or investing it. So do not do it.
Yeah, absolutely. On the refund front, I know that originally when the application went live and before it got put on hold again, you as well as other experts were saying, okay, request a refund on any payments you may have made during the COVID-19 pandemic, because that's money you can put back in your pocket if you qualify for forgiveness, right? So where do you stand in terms of that now? Should borrowers still be requesting a refund even though the forgiveness plan is on pause? Is there at all a chance that they would have to give the refund money back if forgiveness doesn't go through, or does that complicate things? I think there's a little bit of a gray area there.
Absolutely. I am a big believer, again, that you should get your refund. If you haven't yet, call your loan servicer. You ask for a CARES Act refund, because the CARES Act allowed you to get a refund of any payments you made during the CARES Act pause, which is what we're experiencing, right? So yes, there is no harm in getting your refund. Let's just say that it doesn't happen and your loan payments restart again. Well, you have two options. You could either make a lump sum and just throw your refund right back at your loans, or maybe you have other life goals. I mean, the world has changed also in 2 years. Maybe something has changed in your life and you just want to make your monthly payments on your student loans. It didn't cost you anything, because remember, interest has been at zero. Your payments due have been at zero, and you can deploy that money in other ways, whether that's saving for retirement, buying a house, whatnot, or you could just put it right back to your loan. So, or Biden's forgiveness happens, or the loan pause gets extended for another long time. Again, there's so much uncertainty that again, I wouldn't want the government holding on to my money. Just take the refund. I personally just put it in a high yield savings account right now, earn a little bit of interest for a few months, and then decide when payments resume. Do I want to just take that as a lump sum and throw it to my loans? Or, maybe I don't, maybe I want to save that as an emergency fund because I'm not really feeling secure about the economy in 2023. Or, maybe I have other short-term goals that would be more beneficial. So I just think there's literally no reason why you shouldn't request your refund at this point in time.
Is it important to hold on to that refund and not spend it? Or like, does it matter what people do with that money? Like, do they need to be worried about the government coming back at all and like wanting that money back?
No, the government won't want the money back, but they will start asking for their regular monthly payment again when payments resume. So, you don't have to like drop the refund back or give that whole lump sum back. You'll just, your loan balance goes up by $10,000 or whatever amount of refund you requested. And you're kind of like starting again, which might be a bad thing, but it might not be a bad thing. You could either, like I said, repay that lump sum balance back after you earned a little interest, or maybe that money will be what you need to get through the next, 6 to 9 months. If, the economy, your job's in danger, things like that, that could be very, very valuable for you. Whereas your student loan payment, it might be paused. It might continue to be this way, or you could get on an income-driven repayment plan and have a $0 monthly payment. There's so many options with your student loans. And to me, just giving the government extra money doesn't really make sense.
Yeah. But not everyone has to request a refund, right? There is like a certain, I'm trying to remember what the rule is. There's a rule that like if you paid under a certain amount or something like that, you can get it automatic. Do you know what the exception is there, Robert?
Yeah. So granted, I'll put the asterisk there. If the one-time forgiveness goes through. So if the one-time forgiveness goes through and you paid under the $10,000 that you would have gotten forgiven, the government said they would automatically refund you that amount. So let's say you made $5,000 in payments over COVID and you have like $5,000 left on your loan. Well, they would automatically facilitate that refund. But two sides to that. One, that only applies if the one-time forgiveness happens. And so I still recommend you call and you get your refund today. Number two, I don't know if I really trust the execution of that. So again, I would call today to get my refund. And then number three, it's really timing, right? So if this does go through, it might be in 4 or 5 months, and you could have had that money in your bank account right now and earning interest and being useful for yourself today.
Yeah, absolutely. Want to briefly touch on if you can't afford those upcoming payments, assuming they resume in January, do borrowers have options there? Like, can they talk to their loan servicer and figure something out?
Well, yeah, I think the biggest thing for a lot of borrowers is going to be recertifying your income for income-driven repayment. So the fact is, everyone's life has changed in the last 3 years. Your income might be different. It could be more, it could be less. You could be married, have dependents now. Like, there's just so many things that could have changed in your life. And your loan payment might not be accurate. So if you're concerned about what your loan payment is, you need to recertify your income so that you can get an accurate income-driven repayment plan amount for when your loan repayment starts. So keep that in mind. They are giving you a little grace period on doing this. Like, you don't have to do it for, I think it's like till 3 months now, but it all depends on when payments restart. But just certify your income so that way you can get the best payment that you can qualify for.
Yeah, absolutely. Other important action items for everyone here. If you haven't yet, go sign up for student debt relief updates with the Department of Education. The link is right there, ed.gov/subscriptions. That way you'll be one of the first people to know if the application reopens, if there's any significant changes to the forgiveness plan that's been proposed, any important updates in general. So that's like a great resource. You also, I think Robert said this earlier, you want to make sure you find out who your loan servicer is and make sure your contact information is up to date. It's really critical that you have, a dialogue with your loan servicer at this time and know who your loan servicer is. So that way you're prepared when repayments begin in less than 50 days at this point. One question that has come up a few times is taxes. So it's been asked, do they tax you as income on any like student loan? Do they tax you as income on student loan refund, or if you get any of your loans forgiven, will you be taxed on that?
So there's two ones there. I see the question there. So if you get a refund for your payments that you made, that is not taxable. That's just getting a refund. You made the payment, you're getting that payment back. There's no taxable income, anything like that. Now, the question is if Biden's $10,000 or $20,000 is taxable. So the answer is maybe, but the longer answer is federally, it is tax-free. So all student loan forgiveness through 2025 is tax-free. That includes one-time loan forgiveness, IDR loan forgiveness, PSLF's always tax-free, death and discharge, doesn't matter. All types of student. Oh, here's a great one too. Private loans. If you settle a private loan and get that discharged, that's tax-free federally through 2025. However, we have 50 states and 50 different states tax rules, and every state is different on how they tax loan forgiveness. And I'm not going to pretend to be able to recite that on this webinar, but check with your state. It's going to be taxable in, I think, 8 to 12 states. I think some states are currently taxable, but they're trying to pass laws to make it not taxable. It's kind of a mess on the state tax ability, which is also one of the reasons for some of the lawsuits that we've seen emerge, because people are like, whoa, you're giving me a tax burden that I didn't have before. So it could be taxable at the state level. But again, your refund, if you call and get that refund, that is not taxable. That's just a refund of your payments that you didn't have to even make. So keep that in mind.
Right. Where can borrowers find out if their state would impose an income tax on forgiveness?
So we have a great tax guide at the College Investor that we break it down, and we have all the states listed for both Biden's one-time thing and as well as public service loan forgiveness. I can tell you public service loan forgiveness is actually taxable in just one state. It's Mississippi. If any Mississippi attendees are here, you need to call your state legislator. They're the only outlier that's left. Everyone else has fixed it, but Mississippi. But for the Biden one-time forgiveness, you can find it at thecollegeinvestor.com.
Great. Sorry about that. Lastly, we've talked a lot about other forgiveness programs that you may qualify for. So make sure you're going on studentaid.gov and seeing if you maybe qualify for those programs, because like Robert said earlier, you can layer forgiveness programs on top of each other. Martha actually asked, I applied for public service loan forgiveness a couple years ago. I had them reevaluate my payments. I didn't apply recently by the waiver deadline because I currently only work part-time and I wasn't sure if I need to reapply. However, I'm still concerned about some of my previous payments not counting toward the 120. Where can I check to see which payments count and which payments don't?
Yeah, so you would want to log into your Mohella dashboard. So that is going to be the resource. I'm going to put an asterisk there that Mohella hasn't fully updated their dashboard as they've been migrating over from FedLoan. So previously it would have been in your FedLoan dashboard. Today it's going to be in your Mohella dashboard. So you need to log in. If you don't have an account, log in, see what it is. It'll have your loans and your payments listed there. It'll tell you what qualifies. It'll tell you what qualifies under PSLF, temporary expanded PSLF, and like other things right there as well. I will also remind you that you need to file your employment certification for every eligible payment. So if you haven't filed an application in the last 2 or 3 years, you need to file a new one. You should be filing one every single year, or if you change any jobs in the year, because the government doesn't really keep track of whether you're employed or not employed. And that's the other part of it. So remember, public service loan forgiveness requires the right loan type, the right repayment plan, but it also requires you to certify your employment for every eligible payment. And that's how you get to the 120. So if you haven't done that, make sure you certify it. And then I always recommend you upload it in the secure portal online, and you keep that hard copy so that you always have that hard copy for your record. That way, if things are still not getting added up right, you can go to the student loan ombudsman. So that's the next step. And I know we're going to finish this webinar pretty soon. So if you're still not seeing the issues resolved, after some time. I'll tell you, it's taking up to 4 months for people to get their public service loan forgiveness stuff processed right now. But if it's been a long time and you're not getting it, you can escalate that to the Student Loan Ombudsman Office. You can find that at studentaid.gov. I'm sure Nick could find the link for that. But the Student Loan Ombudsman deals with these things where it's like, hey, like 3 payments didn't count and I have the proof. And that's the kind of thing that's the one-off stuff. Like if you just didn't fill out the form, they're not going to help you with that. But like if you have your proof and it was really an issue with the loan servicer, they can help navigate that for you.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely have a ton more questions and we won't be able to get through them all today, but I will update the FAQ on time.com/NextAdvisor. And I will also take a lot of these questions and incorporate them into my future reporting. And if you are desperate to have your question answered, you can email me at alex@nextadvisor.com. You could also email Robert. Robert, what's your email for everyone here?
Yeah, you can hit me up at robert@thecollegeinvestor.com or just the contact page on our site, or leave a comment, social media, all of it. We love your questions.
Absolutely. So we do have two more minutes. So quickly we'll run through scams because they're everywhere, not just for student loan forgiveness, but definitely scammers are taking advantage of this program right now to, take people's money. So a couple tips. This actually came directly from the Department of Education website. So you shouldn't be paying anyone for your loan to forgive your loans. Like if you get a call and someone's like, hey, if you give me a certain amount of money, I can guarantee that your loans are forgiven. Like that's a scam. Don't share your information out, either your account information, your FSA ID, or password. Never give out personal or financial information to anyone you don't know over the phone. And don't refinance your federal loans unless you know the risk. There are a lot of scammers out there, or maybe just even like private lenders who want you to refinance your federal loans with them, who you might need to be a little bit more cautious of like why they're wanting you to refinance with them, and just know like why you would want to refinance your federal loans. Because when you do refinance federal to private, you do lose a lot of those, I guess, how do you call it? You lose a lot of like flexibility or just like, options to like qualify for like this one-time forgiveness debt program, for example. So just be aware of that. And you should also create FSA ID with studentaid.gov. Gives you easy access to information about your loans. So let's see. Here are some resources for everyone. Let's see if we have time for maybe one more question. Okay, it was asked if this recording will be available after this. Yes, it will be. We will have a replay for everyone. Let's see. I do want to leave with one more question.
Or we could speed round a bunch of questions really quick if you want. It's up to you.
We could. Okay. If the FFEL consolidation loan is the FFEL consolidation loan eligible for all the consolidated, I can't talk, if all the consolidated loans were government loans?
FFEL loans do not qualify for either Biden's one-time forgiveness or Biden's or the PSLF program. You have to get that to a direct loan.
Okay. So that kind of just answered that other question. Does asking for a refund affect anything? I have over 20K in loans, including the grant eligibility. I've read that it only increases debt and affects your credit.
Yeah. So getting your refund. So let's just say you have $20,000 in loans. That means, let's just say you paid $10,000 during the pandemic. So, in March 2020, you had $30,000 in loans. You paid $10,000. Now you're down to 20. Well, if you request that refund, it's just going to go right back up to 30 and you're going to have $10,000 in cash in your pocket. That's it.
Would it be better to wait for Fresh Start or apply for IDR?
IDR is the requirement for Fresh Start. So just get on IDR and you'll get a fresh start.
Okay. Let's see. Nelnet requested payments during this time. Were they allowed to do that?
If you did not have a direct loan, you were required to make payments. So Nelnet services both direct student loans and FFEL student loans and private student loans. So if you were required to make payments during the pandemic, you likely had a FFEL loan that did not qualify for any of the pandemic relief or the one-time loan forgiveness. I'm sorry.
Okay, I think this is a good last question because this has come up a lot. Please readdress old loans and if they qualify, i.e. from the 80s and 90s.
So no. So loans from the 80s and 90s are either FFEL loans, they might be Perkins loans, but those two types of loans do not qualify. You have to have a direct student loan. Now, I'll put an asterisk there. If you consolidated those old 80s and 90s loans, after 2009, you may have a direct loan and it could qualify, but chances are it doesn't. But I also put a second asterisk there. If you have a loan from the 80s or 90s, it's over 20 years old at this point in time. And that also means that if you've been making income-driven payments over those years, you could qualify for loan forgiveness under the income-driven repayment plan waiver, which won't be addressed until next summer, but there is hope. So if you've made payments for like 20 years under an income-driven repayment plan since like the early 90s, like you might actually already be eligible for forgiveness, and it could be coming. So check your records, see what's up.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's all the time that we have. Thank you, Robert, for joining me. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I hope that you leave this with some helpful information and more clarity around the student loan forgiveness plan, as well as all the other programs that you can potentially take advantage of with your student loan debt, and just hopefully understand that there are things you can do now to start preparing for repayment to begin in the start of the year. Robert, any final thoughts for anyone here before we get off?
No, I think it's really just important. Stay organized, stay informed about your student loans, sign up for the Department of Education subscription if you're waiting for that. There's a few things you can do right now so that you're prepared while we're in this really awkward limbo that is so stressful for borrowers, as like, things might be happening, they might not be, but just literally the best thing you can do is get organized and understand your options.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much again. And this was great.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.